Hello, I'm Juanita Robertson, and I'm here with Phil Lanier, and he was one of the contributors to the Soul Growing Wisdom for 13-Year-Old Boys book that I have. Phil, can you read to us what you contributed?
Yeah, absolutely, Juanita. So my quote is as follows. I found that happiness came from making things simple. So I only have three goals that are long term, and the rest of my goals are temporary. Try to be the best person I can be, not just for others, but for myself. Love as much and as deeply as possible. Life is too short to be afraid to love. But love is about appreciation, not possession. And third, I want to look back on my life when I am old and know that I made the world a better than when I was born into it. As long as everything I do is accomplishing one or more of these goals, I'm happy finding things. I'm happy and things fall into place, rather.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Phil, how do we know each other?
Well, that's kind of a complicated but interesting question. Well, we are related through marriage, but I would say that we know each other from when I was in a very troubled place in my life. And through that um, marriage connection between your mother and my uncle, you were able to find me and help me out of a bad place, um, and really saved me from a very difficult time that I was in without even realizing you were doing anything, which was kind of magical in and of itself.
One of the things that I think is special to me is, and that your contribution means to me, is you were around 13 when you were one of my youth volunteers with Red Cross.
Yes, ma'am.
And I got a couple of the young men who were my youth volunteers then who contributed to the book, and it just is really sweet to me. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that my experience with Red Cross and with the youth leadership development program that you led definitely aided a lot into how my life went, directionally speaking. My motivations for the way I live my life, my work ethic, and the whole concept of teamwork is where that all was really developed for me. So it was definitely a beautiful experience that I'm glad I got to share with you.
Me too. So when I asked you to contribute, why did you say yes?
Well, I didn't really have much of a father figure growing up. As you know, my dad wasn't around very much. My stepfather was not someone to be looked up to. And one thing I thought was, I had to figure out all these things on my own the hard way. And I wish that someone had been there when I was 13 years old to kind of help me learn some of these things. And so I thought, well, wow, if there was a book, if there was a sort of manual, wow, life would have been a lot easier. I'd love to be part of helping make that happen for someone else.
Is there anything that you would add now that you didn't add then?
Honestly, I feel like those three things are still how I live my life. Um, the only thing that's really I would add to that would maybe be something that I learned from you, actually, which is to try and do the thing that you can't not do. I've been thinking about that and pondering on it for the past almost 2 years now, I think, and it's definitely meant a big difference in my life as far as the goals, the way that I've directed my entire life has actually changed because of that. And I've gone from a place where it was a struggle constantly to try and figure out what's next to I don't really try and figure things out now. I kind of just let them happen to me. Um, I don't know if there's a better way of explaining it, but so I always wanted to help people. And so I started to think about what was the core of helping people. What does that actually mean to me? What does that look like? And how does it feel? And that led me slowly but surely into service. So, how can I be of service? And what does it mean to be of service? And what's the most effective way to be of service? And then I ultimately went back to these questions and thought, at the end of my life, if I look back when I'm old and know that I made the world a better place, how did I do that by being of service? And so that was what led me to where I'm at now, where I'm actually going back to school to be a nurse and work in the end of life transition field in hospice. Because for me, that's the greatest difference I can make. While it might be the end of someone's life, it's the beginning of a whole nother transition for them. And to be a part of that transition, I think would be the most beautiful and meaningful thing that I could do with my life.
Mm.
And I can't not do it because I've been there through several loved ones passing. And I think the reason why I can't not do it is because I can't bear the thought of someone being there going through that without someone like me there
Hmm.
that's willing to care. And also because there are a lot of nurses out there that are unwilling to do that job. And I think it's because they think you need to be disconnected from your patients in order to be successful at that job, but it's not that at all. You have to be willing to suffer over and over and over again, and to go through that mourning and that grief process with your patients over and over and over again, and every time being just as hard, if not harder than the last, but be willing to continue to do it. And I absolutely am, because I like suffering every once in a while. It's good for you, I think, to let those emotions flow out and to find the beauty in it, because life is about balance, and there's lots of positives and negatives, but I think it's ultimately your perception is what makes it positive or negative. If you can find the positive in it, then you'll be okay. So letting the negative flow through, finding the positive in it, and moving on. And that's what the end of life transition is all about. So,
I do a lot of grief work with people, and one of the things that I've come to learn is we so think that grief requires suffering, and it doesn't.
yeah,
The suffering is actually the resistance to the grief.
yeah,
The grief itself is extremely sad, but
right,
it doesn't have to be suffering.
right, exactly. So
Oh,
that's what I mean when I say finding the beauty in it, is
yes.
because if you find the beauty in it, it's not really suffering. You're just experiencing something that's sad. And people always automatically make these assumptions that that's a negative thing, but it's actually a really beautiful, powerful thing. I can think of some of the best times in my entire life, my most meaningful, cherished memories. I was utterly destroyed in
Yeah.
my soul, just torn apart, crying my eyes out with sadness. But I look back on those memories the most fondly because every time that happened, I changed and I became something more beautiful than I was before. To think of those things as a bad thing would be like a butterfly looking back on being a caterpillar is a terrible waste of time. And that would just be silly, wouldn't it? Because how would you get to be the butterfly if you weren't the caterpillar?
Hmm. So I just want to thank you for your quote. For me, when I got it, it's actually one of my favorites in the book, because I just think it's so simple and clear and helpful.
Yeah,
So thank you for being willing to do this.
it's my pleasure. Thanks for letting me be a part of it. It was a great experience.